Chapter 2, Groups as Open Systems. Preview. What is a theory? Overview of general systems theory, the small group as a system. What is a theory? A theory is a map of reality that helps us navigate unfamiliar territory and make decisions. Good theories are practical and reliable ways to help improve your decision making. General theory systems developed by biologist Ludwig von uh, Bartholomew as a way to examine and explain complex living organisms. A system is composed of many smaller units that work independent to sustain life. So when we think of the theory, it's based on something, and it's a map that helps us navigate unfamiliar territory, but a lot of times it's based upon experience, knowledge, training, and education. And so when you have some good theories, you see where these things have, if you look back and say, well, why was this theory turned out to be good? You will see that in the background. Good theories are practical, reliable ways to help improve decision making. So it's not something, it's not somebody telling you, I feel like this is a good decision. No, they're telling you, I think this is a good decision and here's why. And it's actually based on the theory. And so when you look at the systems, general systems theory, a way to examine and explain complex live organisms, a system composed of many smaller units that work independently to sustain life. So how these things come together, one thing by itself is not significant, but when you bring them all together under this theory, that's bottom line is how you're basically able to sustain life, and also is how you're able to make things functional and get results in the business world. A small group as a theory. A system is composed of parts that are interdependent with each other, connected in such a manner that any change in one part ripples through the entire system. So concepts vital to understanding systems. To understand the systems theory, you need to understand four basic concepts true to all systems: inputs, throughputs, process, outputs, and environment. So when you think in terms of looking at the small group, these parts, you think in terms of people, how they come into play. Everybody brings something to the table. Everybody plays a part. And so when it functions like it should, it's like a well-oiled machine and everything is working well. Well, when you take something out of that or somebody out of that, it creates a ripple effect, and that affects everything else. So when we talk about the inputs, all the elements of the system that are present at the outset or the initial raw materials of the system. Some examples of inputs include personalities, needs, attitudes, values, abilities, and skills. So when you bring all these in, and I'll give you an example, you have some people that you bring in, and on paper, they are exactly what you think you need to make something work, something functional, or be in a good system. In reality, you find out that they don't have the personalities. Their personalities mesh. They don't mesh. They collide. They don't get along. One has a bad attitude. These things can actually affect the functionality of a system. Throughout process, influences on the system that result from actual activities within the group as it goes about its business. Some examples of small group throughout output processes include members' behavior, group norms, communication networks, status, relationship, procedures. So when you look at this right here, now you're looking at the some of the things like the behavior, the norms of the group. For instance, if you have a group that has a certain norm, somebody leaves and you bring somebody else that actually does not share that norm. That can be difficult. Or communication networks. Your communication networks are not conducive to what it is you're trying to do. And I give you an example. It may be a situation where you have a team that's trying to work together and you're utilizing your communication networks, but you have them they're too far spread out. Their time zones are too different. You've got people who have 15 hours difference between their time zones trying to work together, but they actually need to communicate. And it's going to be very difficult to do when they have 15 hours between some of them. Outputs. those tangible and intangible products or achievements of the group system emerging from uh, throughput processes. Some examples of tangible outputs includes reports, recommendations, solutions, decisions, physical objects. Some examples of intangible: feelings, personal growth, personal satisfaction, changes in a group's culture. So when you're talking about the outputs, these are things, think in terms of stuff that you can touch and feel when you look at the outputs. A lot of times when you think of some of the tangible outputs, when you think of the intangible, these are things that necessarily you can't touch or feel. These are going to be, like I said, along the lines of how people feel, or chemistry, personal satisfaction, is somebody, some dynamics of the group changes and stuff, or some people change and it changes a lot of things. Environment. Systems do not exist in a vacuum, but are embedded in multiple surroundings or contexts. The walls between a group and its environment are porous, allowing information in and out, as well as providing opportunity for mutual influence between the group and its environment. So the systems do not exist in a vacuum, so you're embedded and surrounded. So in other words, when you have the environment, you can have the group dysfunction in a certain way and to do things. However, it is encompassed by a larger environment, which is the organization. And that could actually have some effects on things too. Bona fide group perspective. So when you look at this, the focus of the relationship between a group and its environment, which is a characteristic of real life, natural occurring groups. Members of groups often belong to other groups that simultaneously influenced by them. So when you find this, to give you an example, you can have a group of people that's there, but everybody has their own little subgroups that they belong to. And sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be bad. Groups typically have to coordinate their actions with other groups within the same parent organization and across organizations. Got to be able to work across organizational lines. You cannot work in silos. Sometimes your groups will have to work with other groups. And this is the problem sometimes when people are just like, you know what, I'll give you an example. If I'm a manager and I have a group and my concern is just my group, and I get along good with my group gets along good with me, and we do well, but I don't do well when I have to work with another manager in another group. So that's a problem right there. That means you have a situation where, every now and then you're supposed to work together, but we can't do it because of me, the manager. There's a frequent communication within the group as well as between the group and other larger groups over interpretation of group goals and extent of the group's authority. So even if you have a group, basically there's a group managing them. And it's usually higher level, people who outrank them, management, senior level leaders, executives, or whatever else. And ultimately, they have to green light the kind of things that you do and have to accept how you operate and give you the opportunity, the authority to do the things that you would like to do. Members bring to the groups a variety of interests, ways of speaking, mental models of effective group problem solving. This is some of the stuff where you bring into when you are members of a group, you have to let everyone know, particularly senior people, managers and leaders, what your interests are, ways of speaking, your mental model, how you want to operate, and get them to bless it. And a lot of times when you do that, if you do it really well, they give you a lot of autonomy. Characteristics of systems. So here we're talking about a closed system, a system with a limited flow of information between itself and the environment. So that basically means you have a system where you have a group of people. There's not a lot coming in and there's not a lot going out. Is way of information. And so you don't know a lot about this closed system because, they have a group, they have a task, they're working on it. But again, it's because it's a closed system in which they work. There's a lot of things you don't know that's going on. One disadvantage of closed systems that the company can be cut off from information that they may need to help to improve. So when you have a closed system, not only stuff not going out, but things aren't coming in. And sometimes that can be to your disadvantage. Characteristics of an open system is a system with free exchange of information with its environment. That is, with inputs and outputs flowing back and forth between the system and the environment. One advantage of an open system is that managers maintain less control. So when you have an open system, information is going out, information is coming in. And I always view this as a healthier type system because of that. And if there's something that you can actually take advantage of, then it may be something that comes in that you'll be able to do that because you do have an open system where things can come and go. Interdependence, when the elements of a system mutually influence each other. So basically, when you see interdependence, that means one can't function without the other. They're almost like codependent. Just as the system as a whole is affected by its environment, so are the system's individual components affected by each other. One element, idea, behavior, or person can change the function of the entire group. So realistically, you may find, I've seen this where you have groups out there who do things, but in order for them to do something, another group has to do something. So they can't do their job without the other group doing something before them. And then they have to do something before a group behind them has to do something. Feedback, the return of system outputs as system inputs, which allows the system to monitor its movement towards goals and make necessary change. Feedback enables the system to monitor its progress towards the goal and make corrections when needed. Multiple causes. The idea that no single system input determines system outputs. Instead, system outcomes are the result of numerous interdependent factors. Multiple paths. The idea that the system objectives can be reached in a variety of ways. So bottom line is getting the feedback. This is when things are going out and things come back in. It's a loop. And so we do something, we send something out, we get feedback about it. It comes back. And it may have multiple people giving input on that. And because of that, that basically says, you know what, you are doing a task, but you alone don't determine exactly how things ultimately end up. And there's multiple ways to actually, a variety of ways of doing things. And that's the advantage of actually getting the feedback. You may actually get some of that brought to your attention. So synergy. Now, this is something that is you may have heard it, you may not have heard it, but it is something that's very important because when it's at work, it's amazing. It's a system ability to take on an identity separate from its individual elements. Positive synergy occurs when a group's output is superior to the individual members' abilities. So when you put a group together and they work on something and you had expectations, I'm going to use numbers. On a scale of 1 to 10, you had expectations that this group could possibly reach a 6 and that was going to be good. When in essence, they actually hit a 9. And because they got there because their synergy was actually allowed them to operate above them together, coming together and building positive synergy, they were able to overachieve. Now, on the flip side, negative synergy occurs when a group's output is less than the individual members' abilities. So when you bring people together, for some reason, their synergy did not take off in a positive way. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you thought that they would hit a 6. Well, they only hit a 3. And, because their synergy level was never the same as the other group. And that's when, you have a problem right there. And that's usually when you have that. That's usually when you have to take a look to say, we may have to look at replacing some people or reevaluating what they do in order to make this project successful. That concludes this chapter.